Have you ever longed to become someone truly unshakable? The kind of person untouched by criticism, rejection, loss, or betrayal? Have you ever imagined what it would feel like to finally silence that quiet suffering, that invisible ache eating you from within, even when you manage to smile on the outside? Perhaps you're exhausted from trying to please everyone, constantly maintaining the image of strength, while deep down, all you crave is a brief moment of rest from the weight of being untouchable. But here's a truth that few have the courage to tell you. As long as you keep running from pain, it will continue to own you. The more you numb yourself, hide, or build emotional armor, the tighter pain's grip becomes. You become a hostage, not to what happens around you, but to every word that wounds, every action that disappoints, every silence that suffocates. And this isn't weakness. It's simply the reality of being human. The only difference between people is that some are just better at pretending. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in depth psychology, once said, "We are not what happens to us, but what we choose to become." That's where the real key lies. Strength is not about freezing your heart or becoming indifferent. It's about integration, the courage to bring into the light everything that still hurts in the dark corners of your soul. True resilience isn't the absence of pain. It's being fully aware of who you are, even while you're bleeding. If you've made it this far, it's not a coincidence. This message is for you, the one tired of constantly hurting, tired of feeling powerless before the emotions and actions of others. You've believed your pain comes from the outside world, but what if its roots are buried much deeper, inside you? You might think that the source of your pain lies in the world outside, in the careless words of others, the betrayals you never saw coming, the abandonments or disappointments. But the truth is harsh. Nothing external can truly hurt you unless there's already an open wound inside. What really wounds you is not what others do. It's what those experiences awaken within you. It's the narrative you've been telling yourself, the unhealed traumas, the emptiness you try to cover with pride, control, and a desperate need to appear okay. Jung taught that the suffering we feel in response to the outside world is merely a reflection of what remains unresolved internally. This is why some can endure devastating events and remain composed, while others crumble over a single careless remark. It's not about the event itself. It's about where it strikes within you. Here comes an uncomfortable truth. You still suffer because, deep down, you believe you can control how the world treats you. You strive to be good enough, smart enough, strong enough, understanding enough, as if these qualities could shield you from pain. But control is an illusion. As long as you cling to it, you live in tension, constantly trying to predict the unpredictable, to avoid the inevitable. If you want to stop suffering, you must stop shielding yourself from it. The answer isn't control, it's awareness. Pain only has power when it resonates with an echo already present inside you. Your freedom begins the moment you realize that nothing outside can harm you unless it triggers something within. This is the battlefield you've been avoiding, the unconscious. The parts of yourself you cannot see, understand, or master will master you instead. In the next part, we will dive deeper into this hidden territory, where true transformation begins, the place where the roots of your emotional reactions lie. Waiting for conscious recognition. The biggest lie you've been told is that you are in control of your life. Wake up, you're not, at least not while you continue living on autopilot, reacting without understanding why, feeling without knowing the source, making decisions only to later sabotage them. Carl Jung made this clear when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's exactly what's happening to you right now. The sudden anger, the inexplicable sadness, the pain that seems to appear from nowhere, none of it is random. These are messages from parts of you that have been ignored, forgotten, or repressed. Jung called this the unconscious, not a vague cloud of thoughts, but a living force, a system of memories, desires, traumas, and fears shaping your feelings and actions whether you realize it or not. Ever wonder why certain words cut you deeply while others shrug them off? Because those words touch unresolved points still alive within you. They remain alive only because you've never confronted them. You've simply shoved them under the psychological rug, and now you keep tripping over them. Jung said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." Condemnation oppresses, it doesn't free. Yet what have you done? Judged yourself, silenced yourself, avoided feeling as if that would solve anything. Ignoring the unconscious doesn't make it vanish. It finds more dangerous ways to manifest, in toxic patterns, repeated self-sabotage, anxieties that appear when life seems fine. This is not bad luck, it's your unconscious calling for attention, and you insist on sleeping. If you want to stop being at the mercy of external pain, you must stop running from what lives inside you. The more you shield yourself from the world, the more vulnerable you become to your own inner turmoil. But there is a way out. True resilience doesn't come from resistance. It comes from integration. Becoming untouchable is not an act of avoidance, but of deep self-knowledge. And this is what we will explore next, what it truly means to be unshaken, and why real strength arises from embracing yourself, not building walls around yourself. Most people believe the only way to avoid pain is to shut themselves off. They build walls, wear masks, and create emotional armor, pretending that nothing affects them. "I don't care anymore," they say. "Nothing touches me." Yet beneath this facade, they continue to bleed. The problem isn't feeling, it's not understanding what you're feeling or why. This confusion is reserved for those who haven't yet truly known themselves. Jung wisely said, "Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but when you touch a human soul, be just another human soul." And the human soul you hide behind your strong, controlled exterior is screaming to be seen. Emotional strength isn't about coldness, ignoring pain, or pretending conflict doesn't exist. It's about integration, bringing into the light everything you've buried in the shadows. You don't become untouchable by erecting walls. You become untouchable when you realize that no one can harm what you've already embraced within yourself. When you integrate your fears, insecurities, and flaws, your reactions are no longer automatic. You stop being an emotional puppet. This is true freedom. Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you really are, not who others expect you to be, not the version of yourself you believed you had to present to be accepted. Individuation is born from the meeting of light and shadow, ego and unconscious. It is not about perfection, it's about wholeness. Here's the paradox. The more you run from pain, the more it chases you. The more you try not to be affected, the more fragile you become. But when you confront your wounds, when you accept all that you are, beautiful and ugly, noble and shameful, nothing outside has the power to dismantle you. This path demands courage, courage to look within, to abandon masks, to truly feel. For it is precisely within suffering that the seeds of transformation are sown. And in the next part, we will explore how suffering, far from being an enemy, can become the gateway to your authentic strength. From a young age, you were taught to fear pain. Suffering was labeled weakness, crying a waste, and feeling too much of vulnerability. So you learned to flee, deny, and suppress. But the more you avoid suffering, the more it pursues you. And the worst part is, it changes shape. It disguises itself as anxiety, anger, apathy, boredom, or self-destructive impulses you can't even trace. Ignored pain doesn't vanish. It burrows deeper until one day, without warning, it collapses your inner world. Jung saw suffering differently. He regarded pain as a messenger of the soul, an alarm from the unconscious, a language your true self uses to command attention. He said depression is like a lady in black. If she appears, don't push her away. Invite her in, offer her a seat, and listen to what she wants to tell you. But most people ignore this message. They silence themselves, distract themselves, stay busy, or numb their emotions. They do everything possible to avoid facing what truly matters. Yet what is this pain trying to reveal? The answer is simple, yet profound. Suffering only overwhelms you because you are still at war with yourself. Part of you wants to grow. Another part clings to what is familiar. Deep inside, something is calling for transformation. But your ego, accustomed to control, attempts to suppress this call. It is in this friction, between desire for change and resistance to it, that pain is born. Growth is uncomfortable. Letting go of old beliefs, severing toxic ties, allowing what no longer serves you to die. All of this is a mourning process, an internal death and rebirth. And in this space of ruin, something new emerges. When your old structures collapse, your defenses fall, and your vulnerabilities are exposed. You see who you truly are beneath the masks and performances. At this point, suffering transforms. It becomes sacred because it humbles you before the only source capable of freeing you, yourself. Jung understood this. Pain is not a system failure, nor the end of the road. It is the beginning of the journey toward individuation, the process through which you reclaim your wholeness and become unshakable from within. Asterisk. Few people have the courage to begin the journey of individuation, and even fewer are willing to see it through. This path offers no comfort, no guarantees, and no protection for the ego. It dismantles it. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming who you truly are. But to do so, you must first unlearn who you think you are. And that can hurt more than any external rejection. You are not your achievements, your traumas, or the image you constructed to be respected, loved, or admired. These were survival tools, strategies to navigate life, but surviving is not the same as living. Individuation calls you beyond survival. It demands that the unconscious bring forth everything that has been hidden, repressed, or distorted. This process requires the dissolution of the persona. Jung called it a mask of collective convenience. You must tear away your constructed identity to discover what lies beneath. Only then do you begin to become untouchable, not because nothing affects you, but because you have walked through the fire. You have faced your inner monsters, stared at your shame, anger, and neediness, and said, "I see you, and you no longer control me." This clarity, this lucidity in the presence of your own darkness, grants a strength that no longer depends on approval, recognition, or control. You no longer need to be loved by everyone, to win every argument, or to appear strong. You simply know who you are, and no one can take that away. True emotional armor is not a shell. It is a core, a center of consciousness where all your parts, light and shadow, beauty and flaw, pride and shame, are integrated. You may feel pain, yet it cannot break you. You may be hurt, but you no longer lose yourself because you've stopped being reactive and begun to live from the depths rather than the surface. Yet this depth comes at a price: solitude. Not because you are alone, but because few can accompany you on this journey. Most are still on the surface, wearing masks, afraid to feel. When you free yourself, distance naturally arises. It is not rejection, it is maturation. You no longer fit where you once hid. Asterisk. This brings us to the final stage of the journey: consciousness as a shield. True protection doesn't come from strength or armor, it comes from clarity. Nothing external can harm you if you are fully aware of what happens within. Words lose their sting, rejections no longer devastate, and losses do not crush you, but only if you awaken. Awakening is not a sudden miracle. It is a daily choice. It is looking within even when it hurts, taking responsibility for your emotions without blaming others, the past, or fate. Jung said, "What you resist persists." What you accept transforms. All your life, you resisted the fear of not being enough, the emptiness of rejection, the pain of loneliness, and the anguish of feeling unseen. What did you do with that? You hid, silenced yourself, tried to control everything, and aimed to be perfect and strong. All of this exhaustion has brought you here. Weary from fighting the world and yourself. Now, you understand that emotional immunity is not hardness. It is clarity. It is not about building armor, but expanding awareness. When you understand your triggers, your patterns, and your wounds, the actions of others lose their power to destroy you. You still feel, but you don't drown. You still suffer, but you don't lose yourself, and that changes everything. What shields you is not avoidance. It is immersion. Those who live on the surface are tossed by every wave. Those who dive into life know the stability, the silence, and the power below, and that is where you are headed when you live from this place of integration, presence, and acceptance. The world may try to knock you down, but it finds no weak points. Pain still exists, but it no longer defines you. Suffering becomes a teacher, and clarity becomes your protector. If this message resonates with you, write in the comments, "I choose awareness." Begin a movement of people who no longer survive by pretending to be strong, but live through truth. And remember, the next video continues this journey. True transformation begins only when you take the next step and don't stop halfway. Asterisk to continue. It's essential to understand the role of suffering in your transformation. From early on, you were taught to see pain as an enemy. Feeling too much was a weakness, crying was a waste of time, and vulnerability made you fragile. So you learned to run, to deny, suppress, and avoid. But avoidance doesn't make pain disappear. The more you flee, the more it follows, often disguised as anxiety, anger, boredom, or impulsive behaviors that seem to come from nowhere. Jung offered a radically different perspective. Pain is a messenger, a signal from your unconscious, a call from your true self. He compared depression to a lady in black. If she appears, don't push her away. Invite her in, offer her a seat, and listen. She comes to show what needs attention. The reason suffering overwhelms you is because you are still in conflict with yourself. Part of you longs for growth, while another clings to what is safe and familiar. Your ego, accustomed to control, resists change, and in that tension, pain emerges. Growth hurts. Letting go of outdated beliefs, cutting toxic ties, and releasing what no longer serves you is an inner process of death and rebirth. Yet this is precisely where something new can be born. When the old structures within collapse, when your defenses fall and vulnerabilities are exposed, you finally encounter your authentic self, free from masks, performances, and the burden of appearing strong. At this critical juncture, suffering becomes sacred. It humbles you before the one force capable of liberation, yourself. Pain is not a system failure, not an end. It marks the beginning of the journey toward individuation, where the unconscious brings hidden truths to the surface and you begin to reclaim your wholeness. If you continue this path, the next step involves a deeper confrontation with your shadows, your fears, insecurities, and unresolved emotions. This is where real power arises, not from avoidance, but from full integration and acceptance of everything you are. Asterisk. The journey of individuation is not for the faint-hearted. Few dare to begin, and even fewer persist. This path offers no comfort, no guarantees, and dismantles the ego. Jung described individuation as becoming who you truly are, which first requires unlearning who you think you are. This is often more painful than any external rejection, because much of what you believe defined you turns out to be an illusion. You are not your accomplishments, your traumas, or the image you crafted to gain love, respect, or admiration. These were survival tools, strategies to navigate life. But surviving is not living. Individuation calls you beyond mere survival. It pushes the unconscious to bring hidden, repressed, and distorted elements to the surface. To achieve this, the persona must dissolve. Jung called it a mask of social convenience. You need to strip away the false skin you've worn to reveal what lies beneath. Only then do you begin to become untouchable, not because life no longer affects you, but because you have faced the fire within. You confront your monsters, stare at your shame, anger, and neediness, and declare, "I see you. You no longer control me." This internal clarity grants a strength independent of approval, recognition, or control. You no longer need to be loved by everyone, to win every argument, or to appear invulnerable. You know who you are, and that knowledge cannot be taken from you. True emotional armor is not a protective shell. It is the integration of all your parts into a stable center of consciousness. Pain may still be present, but it does not break you. Hurt may occur, but you do not lose yourself because you have stopped reacting impulsively and have embraced wholeness. This depth carries a cost: solitude. Not because you are alone, but because few can accompany you. Most remain on the surface, hiding behind masks and fearing feeling. Your freedom inevitably distances you, not out of pride, but because you no longer belong where you once hid. Now we arrive at the culmination of this journey: consciousness as your true shield. Real protection does not come from strength or armor, but from clarity. Nothing in the outside world can harm you if you are fully aware of what happens within. Words lose their sting, rejections no longer wound, losses do not topple you, but only if you awaken. Awakening is not a sudden event. It is a daily choice. It is looking inward even when it hurts, taking full responsibility for your feelings without blaming others, the past, or fate. Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." All your life, you resisted fear, emptiness, rejection, loneliness, and invisibility. You hid, silenced yourself, tried to control everything, and aimed to be perfect and strong. That struggle brought you here, exhausted from fighting both the world and yourself. Now you understand that emotional immunity is not about hardness. It is clarity. It is not about armor, but awareness. When you recognize your triggers, patterns, and wounds, the actions of others lose their power to destroy you. You still feel, but you don't drown. You still suffer, but you don't lose yourself. And that changes everything. True protection comes not from avoidance, but from immersion. Those who live on the surface are tossed by every wave. Those who dive deep into life discover stability, silence, and power below, and that is where you are headed, living from a place of integration. Presence and acceptance means the world may try to knock you down, but it finds no weak points. Pain still exists, but it no longer defines you. Suffering becomes a teacher, and clarity becomes your safeguard. If this message resonates, commit in the comments, "I choose awareness." Begin a movement of people who no longer merely survive by pretending to be strong, but who live fully in truth. Remember, transformation is continuous. The next step continues this journey, because real change begins only when you don't stop at the first step. If this video blew your mind, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to explore more insights like this, don't forget to like this video and hit the subscribe button. See you next time.